Everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be a new book recommendation video. I thought for Black History Month I would do a video about some of my favorite Black authors, although I'm also going to be including a bunch more recommendations and also some nonfiction specifically for allies. So let's get to it. I attempted to do a top 5, but I can never stick to a specific number, so we're just going to go for it. Number 1. Highly recommend Octavia E. Butler. In general, I own quite a few of her books and I am making it my life mission to just hoard them all. Earlier this month, I read Dawn, which I'm already telling you is going to make it to my best books of 2022. This was super impactful. This is the first book in a trilogy. It is a first contact with aliens, which is one of my favorite tropes, but I have never read anything quite like this. You follow the main character. Basically, humanity killed off each other, nuclear war, and aliens arrive to just swoop in and save the leftovers. And you're following the story through the eyes of the main character, and she is trying to figure out what's going on and if aliens are trying to help, are they the enemy, but at the same time trying to figure out, is their version of good something that aligns with the way human would think? I could not put it down. I read it in 2 days. It's about 250 pages, so it's not super long. But by the end, I was just left wondering if humanity was even worth saving. So if you're looking for a new sci-fi, I would highly recommend this one. I also read Kindred. This one is more of a mix of historical fiction, time traveling. You're following a 26-year-old Black woman who is sent 150 years prior in a deep south, and she obviously has to figure out, one, what's going on, second of all, having to deal with racism and slavery, and she goes back and forth between the timelines trying to just survive. I think the best strength from the author is the way that she can make you feel so many raw emotions. I just need to read everything by her, which, as you saw, I have a big pile of her books and I will be reading all of them, definitely finishing the other series this year. Hopefully. I'm terrible at finishing series, but I definitely want to, so I highly recommend her in general. I feel like she deserves so much more hype. But do yourself a favor and pick up some Octavia E. Butler for sure. Absolutely adore her. If you read any kind of fantasy, you have definitely heard of N.K. Jemisin. I absolutely adore the Broken Earth trilogy. This is kind of a mix of fantasy and apocalyptic setting, which is one of my favorite combos. I love the story of the main character. She, one day, her husband decides to kill their son, and then he kidnaps their daughter, and she's trying to get her back. And you're following the story through a few different point of views. Some of it is told as second person, so you. So the writing can be a bit confusing for some people, but I overall just really enjoyed the magic system. The characters, they were super attaching. I really enjoyed the ending, which, underrated. I feel like I am often disappointed by the ending of a trilogy, which is obviously not a good feeling, but this one was very satisfying and I just really enjoyed it. I also would recommend Emergency Skin by her, which is a short story part of the Forward collection, and this was my favorite story in the whole collection. Easy 5 stars. It's about 30 pages, so really I don't want to say anything. If you just want to hit your reading goal this year and you need one more book, I would recommend this one. And obviously, I also have still more of her books on my shelf. We'll be reading them. This one terrifies me. I know it's a combined edition of all the books in this series, but like, this is terrifying. Maybe I should do a challenge of like reading the biggest book on my shelf or something and then have to read it. A new author to me would have to be Rebecca Runhorse. I read Black Sun and I was shocked. I will let you know what the first chapter is because I feel like it's the trigger warning that is needed. It's the most intense portion of the book, but still. The story begins with this woman who locks herself up in her room with her son, and she drugs him, carves a design on his back, then she blinds him and then throws herself down the balcony. I think I didn't forget anything. So it starts really intensely, but afterwards it's not that bad if you are more sensitive, but super interesting. I love whenever fantasy books mix magic, politics, and religion, and I thought this one was well done, and I'm really curious to see where the story is going to go. This is the first book in a trilogy. Book 2 is coming out like any day now, so I will be reading it. And there are people that just ride on the back of giant crows, which, yes, please. A debut author's book that totally impressed me would have to be The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. I really enjoyed this. Once again, adult fantasy. Let's be real, most of my favorites will be fantasy and sci-fi because they're my favorite genres. In this case, you're following like a reluctant main character who ends up starting like a big revenge story because something happens, will not spoil it, and he has to become the best fighter ever in order to get his revenge, and you're just following him in the first book trying to become the strongest person ever. And but I thought it was well done, like the explanation. I feel like sometimes I really dislike the trope of someone that becomes more powerful than everyone overnight. I don't feel like it was this case here. and I enjoyed the friendships. I enjoyed the magic. It's not super explained in the first book, but I'm really curious to hear more about it, and I will not spoil it. There is some romance, not a fan in general, but I don't feel like it overpowered the story, and obviously there are dragons, so if that's your thing, would highly recommend. Book 2 is out. This is going to be a courtlet, so I will be reading book 2 any day now. Now, more fiction recommendation, but like rapid fire. The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. This is a retelling of a Lovecraft story, which I'm not familiar with his stuff, but it's urban fantasy / horror. Could not put it down. Very short. An Unkindness of Ghosts, adult sci-fi. You're following the remnant of humanity on a spaceship, and main character who is described as black, queer, and autistic, and she's trying to figure out what happened to her mother following her journal. Legendborn, which is a YA fantasy. It's a retelling of Arthur and the Round Table. Personally though, I cared more about the other witches than the Round Table. My Sister, the Serial Killer, which is a mystery thriller. The title says it all. This woman is trying to hide the fact that her sister keeps dating men and killing them. This book made me realize that I don't know a lot of mystery thrillers written by black authors, so if you have any recommendations, would love to hear them in the comment section. Because the only one I can think of that I have on my TBR is Razorblade Tears, which I've heard is great, but that's about it. The Vanishing Half, which is a historical fiction that won the Goodreads Choice Award of that year in 2020. You're following twin sisters. One of them stays in their small town and the other one goes in the big city and is passing as white. And then the rest are nonfiction. So we have obviously Becoming by Michelle Obama. Would highly recommend the audiobook since she's the one narrating it. It's always better when that's the case. Also All Boys Aren't Blue, which is a memoir / coming out story where the author has a very accepting family, which I think is great representation to also see. And then the rest are more nonfiction for allies. So I would highly recommend checking out Hood Feminism, which is a great way to start learning more about intersectionality. Also The New Jim Crow, which would be a great way to learn about the prison system in the US and the disenfranchisement, I can never say that word, it's the same one in French, of young black men. Super impactful. Also How to Be an Anti-Racist, where the author discusses his own journey through dealing with his internalized racism and his whole theory that you are either anti-racist or racist, that there's no in between. I also started Stamped by the same author, which was returned to library, so I haven't finished it yet, but so far it was really good. So these are all really great books that I would recommend if you're looking to read more from black authors. Would love to hear your favorites in the comment section. I'm always looking to add more books to my TBR. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe. I will be putting more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out, and I will see you in an upcoming video very soon. Bye. I need to build more muscle.